with the hearing group. Hearing group. Yep.
Hello, welcome.
They go out to market for a lot of our stuff, but again, working with our HR. Circle Row, right? But it's anyway.
Yeah, my name is Russ, Circle Row, West of West Davie. Franchise is a very large hospital. Operated. It's in Davie, I live in Davie. But we are the emergency response team that handles stuff. So that it's
I don't know if it's still in play. That we had for if our water utility will come down. Or
sewage.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Right. So I don't know if we still have that contract in play, but that was something that we did get out a while ago. But I don't know, that might be something we can talk about offline to begin to study.
Good morning, my name is Vicky. I'm here for myself. I do all things real estate and I do property management and development on the residential side. For myself and that's fine.
Okay, so that's interesting. Actually, that's one project that I'm kicking around right now. That we're thinking about putting together a qualified list of commercial brokers to sell properties as we have online. So that may be something, because we do have surplus properties on occasion that we will purchase because public purpose might be an eyesore and we need to tear it down. I think we can do that. So sometimes we'll buy a piece of property and we intended for a project and it doesn't come into fruition, so we'll turn it around and sell it back out, and that comes through our office. So we sell all of Laura back property, which is also our real property and basically our
You guys also do conservation? Well, it could be that many, but more so, I would take the property, let's say, you have surplus property and you have to become a cat.
Yeah, our public works, and a lot of us, we work for the department and anything like that. Typically our departments are doing that standpoint. If it's a, all in look kind of thing like that, we have another option. Okay, so it is 10 o'clock. Looks like Marcella, are you about ready?
About 18 people online. Thank you so much for joining. We are online. We do have the chat open. Feel free to go ahead and drop your company name and your business type in there so we could provide you some scenarios that you relate to.
So as Marcella's getting finalized here, I do want to mention that this is Marcella's first training today, so no pressure. I want you to ask her the really tough, hard questions. Dig in deep on those, but I'll take the side. So, really, Marcella does a great job. Marcella is one of our procurement agents. And she works with our team. She's been with us for about 1.5 years now, almost.
2 years.
Almost 2 years. So she stuck her hand up and wanted to do the training. So I'm going to be working with her side by side, but are about outreach. And that's what today is. Today is basically, and we're going to talk about several different things. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Marcella, once we get started, but I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of an opener. So today, basically, we do outreach on a quarterly basis. We believe in the more you know how to do business with government, the win-win situations. worse than getting a submission or, something, it comes in and it's wrong and it's flawed, or there's something, and you put your time and effort. We know that you're working on your side to do everything you can to be competitive. And if you're struggling and you're going through some of these things, it's not good, right? They're sitting even here today, they're training, learning how to do this, investing in that. That will help you hopefully not make those mistakes and get thrown out of the pit on technicality. And some of those ones are frustrating to us as they are to you. If you've ever been in that situation and you're like, you got thrown out because of the technicality, believe me, that is bad for us. We see that because a lot of times we got to be fair for both parties, and you don't want to have that on your side, right? So you wouldn't want to basically be excluded and have somebody else would be allowed in for something else. So we're all about fairness. We look at this, we take it into consideration when we're we're excluding people from the process to make sure that did they really make a mistake, or is this
Hey
something
there.
having unfair advantage?
Good, thank
Okay.
you.
And so basically that's what we're evaluating a lot.
Oh, thank you.
Today, and going through the questions and some of the things you can learn and walk away from today, hopefully, will be to improve your process and where you find solicitations and how you find solicitations. And some of the things that actually, when you're talking to different governmental staff,
Open up training like to how to do the intake and stuff like that.
basically will help
Yeah,
you.
I can do that. Is there a
Rebecca?
specific project? Oh,
Rebecca?
sorry. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness, give me a second. Give me a second, please.
Sorry, that's our procurement coordinator, who's doing the sound check for us.
More of a sound check. Full out conference call on our own.
Yeah, I'll need you to mute me. It won't let me mute myself weirdly enough. I don't know why.
I think you can mute her.
Yeah,
Please
mute me,
do.
please. I'm sorry, everyone.
Rebecca, we can't mute you, so you're gonna need to mute yourself.
It's not letting me do it. I'm just gonna leave the meeting if it'll let me leave
That's
because
fine.
it's not letting me do it.
Okay,
All right.
okay.
So as Brian stated, my name is Marcella. I'm a procurement agent here at the Town of Davie. And thank you for coming. We're very glad that you're here. We want to let you know that we have this presentation that we created, but it will also be available online. And I'll be able to show you where you can find it and additional information that will help. So you don't have to worry much about jotting notes or taking time for focusing, as all this will be available later on. So first of all, I want to start with an introduction with the Town of Davie. In the first bubble there, I did state that the Town of Davie is a historical Western Cape town, as many of you guys already know. And it's also known as a cowboy town, which is home to nearly 107,000 residents who live 35 square miles across the map. So in the next two bubbles, we wanted to inform you that we actually have recently received multiple awards for our procurement processes. And we just want to share this with you because we want to inform you exactly how much pride we have in our procurement process and the fact that we also follow like Florida statute as well. So one of the main awards that we received was the FAFO. As you can see, that's the second bubble there. It's been 8 consecutive years. And if you obviously want to know more about that, you could read about it as well.
Are you familiar with that, Ryan? Florida Association of Public Procurement Officers. In March of every year, they do a conference up in the middle of the state. They do part of it as a trade show. So that's something that you can look up online. It's epicpo.org. And it you might call and register to see if it's something that you may be interested in being able to be front and center as a vendor at the trade show. For a lot of agencies throughout the state of Florida. I don't know the exact number, but it's usually attended by close to 600 people. So pretty good turnout. for a 1 day.
And our other award was for the 084. And as you can see, there are only 2 local government agencies in the Broward County that received this award, and they were actually one of them.
That's actually our accreditation. So it's actually not only just a reward for our, when we look at this stuff from our standpoint, our peers we're being evaluated on our policies, our procedures, our best practices, what we're doing. And we're compared, and that's actually an accreditation that we hold here, and we're one of 2 agencies in the Broward County area that actually have that accreditation. So again, we take our procurement very seriously in what we do, and we want to hold to, those higher professional standards.
And the last bubble here informs you how many contracts we've had in fiscal year 2024. As you can see, it was 497 contracts for services and or goods. So I put this information here, so in that way you could have an idea on the volume that we do in Town of Davie. And also you could see the departments and divisions. As you can see, we have a large variety of different departments that we have to fulfill their needs. And as Brian usually states, we go from mandates to buildings. So we cover all the small to the big. Is there any questions on this slide at this time? We'll have the chat available as well. I'll give a second in case anybody has a question.
Does the Town of Davie cover all of like areas like that kind of thing? Sheriff's Department, clerks, utilities.
All right, as you can see here, that's actually one of my departments is the town clerk's office. Of course. Any other questions?
What?
Okay, great. So
No.
we're going to continue to the next slide. So
What do
the
you
next
need?
slide, main topics that we will go over.
What do you want? You want to lay down?
1 second, let me see if I can.
Vitamin C stuff that's over here, right?
Oh, you're sick with a cold?
So again, as I mentioned, these are the main topics that we will go over today. I tried to create this timeline here. Obviously, that would be helpful for people that don't really know where to begin with doing business with the town of Davie and for any government entity. So the first one is solicitation, threshold, and differences. So of course, we do have different types of solicitations, and there are some differences that we will get to. The next is our Town of Davie procurement homepage, which is actually our hub where you could find all of the information as well as this presentation, which will be available later today. Also, we're going to go over OpenGov, which is our electronic bidding platform, which I'm sure most of you have heard of. If not, we will go over that information. We will also go over our active solicitations, future solicitation opportunities, insurance and additional requirements, vendor registration, which is through Payment Works, maintaining your contract, and common mistakes. So at this time, does anybody have any questions? Okay, great. So,
You want me to sit over there and tap it for you, or?
I have to click here.
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
So the section here is in regards to the thresholds and the differences. So in the first section on the top, there are purchases from $0 to $5,000. So typically within this price range, departments can go ahead and request a quote for anything that they need. So for example, if they need, what's a good example based off someone's business? Does someone have something that they would like to use as an example?
Small water loss.
I'm sorry?
Small water loss.
So like a plumbing?
Now, if they had a broken pipe or something like that, and basically flooding the floor in their office.
Well, that could get a little tricky because technically we do have like a plumbing services contract. So,
Yeah, it wouldn't be plumbing service, it'd be a dry out. So plumbing services would come in and take care of the pipe. or
After the
source.
fact.
We would come in and extract the water, dry out the liquid.
okay, great. So from my understanding, I don't believe we have a contract for that at this time. So that would actually be a good example. So If they did, any department needed that service, they could reach out to you and inform, hey, these are the specs, this is what's going on, can you please provide me a quote? If it's under $5,000, then they can actually move forward with the work at that time. A contract is not required. So again, if it's under $5,000, a contract is not exactly required. And they can contact you directly to request a quote. But keep in mind, there obviously are other vendors as well that they could contact.
In the scenario of an emergency, because this is kind of one you picked at, as far as we can go over that 5,000, we do have to follow our threshold, but we get approval after the fact on those. So with your situation, if it was something that was still 10,000, the department would still be going out, trying to contact the department or another vendor or contractor to get in there to get a quote. We try to keep, obviously, if it's water damage and it's going to be lost to the town, we're life, health, safety, anything of that nature, lost to the town, we're going to be moving on those things immediately. So departments will have additional authority to do that if we give them approval to do that.
So to add on to that, that would be considered an EPO, which is an emergency purchase order. So as Brian stated, obviously, we could skip a few steps for the fact of it is considered an emergency. The next.
I have a question from.
Okay.
He's asking how does co-op contracts and use of cooperative state contracts apply to these thresholds?
They apply the same way. They apply exactly the same way. Anything that you just, we'll get to cooperative contracts a little bit farther down the road here. So if they can hang on, we can jump into that a little bit deeper. Okay. But thank you for asking.
So the next threshold here is for informal thresholds. So as you can see, this is purchases between $5,000 and a penny and $35,000. So usually the department would kind of have an idea already on the service amount. So they most likely already tried to get a quote, realized it was over $5,000 and contacted us, informed us that they have to move forward with a informal contract. So as you can see, that could be either an ITQ, which is known as an invitation to quote, or an RFP, which is request for proposal.
They could also do a piggyback too. I mean, and that's something, yeah. And again, this is something that can be utilized, which we consider them competitive contracts that are done through another competitive agency. So that's, obviously, does anybody not know what a piggyback is real quickly? We're going to touch on this, but we have the ability through Florida statute 287. It allows us to utilize other agencies' contracts that have gone through a competitive bid process. So let's say the city of Fort Lauderdale puts out a bid for asphalt resurfacing, okay? And that's pulling up the road with the big old machine that's got the conveyor belt on it and everything like that. That's a milling and grinding, and then they will put an asphalt layer on it. And then we have unitized prices that we know actually what we could get per linear foot on that. So we can take that contract if there's a contract been competitively bid, been awarded by their council commission or any of the authorities that have the approval to do so. And we can go to that vendor and say, we would like to utilize that contract with the town of Davie, as our own. And what we'll do is create a piggyback contract and put in an agreement that said, you agree that we're utilizing this contract under these terms and conditions. And that's a piggyback, really comes down to. It's a shortcut for us. Gives us a lot of ability to do things where we have large agencies with small staffing on this, and we have to utilize it for most common things. So a lot of times we can take advantage of using it. We're not reinventing the wheel, and we can be quicker on things. And you, as suppliers out there, we'll talk about again. It's something that is a key for you to hold in your hand when you're walking into a lot of agencies. And we'll get there, but go ahead.
Question.
Yes.
Can you use the exact one contract any other municipality throughout the state, or is it regional?
No, I can piggyback off a contract from Nome, Alaska. So it's in any other government agency. Now, I don't know, I mean, what would I need from normal Alaska, maybe ice or something like that, but I'm just saying, I'm not sure. I'm just saying that I can use it. That's an extreme example, obviously, but we use all over the place contracts from everywhere, from Nevada. Sometimes it's large agencies, if it's a piece of public safety equipment, that's a body camera or something like that, was bid out to buy a tractor from Iowa, so it could be anywhere.
How do you source those contracts? How do you know what Nevada had?
That's a great question. So, there is a ton of large national cooperative contracts out there, and there are regular defining cooperative contracts. And that's what really my team and working with the department's on. But we do have a couple of tools that we use for this. We know what those large cooperatives are. We do some keyword searches just by Google. Sometimes there's a word contract for X. A lot of times we will come to you, have you approach us and say, here, I have a contract with the town of Davie and for these services. And that's why I said earlier that that's like a key walking in. You have a contract and you speaking to a public works person, a parks person, something, and say, I have this contract, they're gonna look to that first, because that means that they don't have to get us too deeply involved, and that's like, the angels sound when they hear that they don't have to bring procurement into this. Oh my God, I can basically shortcut a lot of things and have to drag me through a 90-day process. But it gives them a lot easier method for doing it. So, lastly, we utilize a product called Pavilion. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. Pavilion is a very large database that has contracts on it. We use it actually to find a lot of contracts, but we also feed it with our contracts as well, since we use a system that she's going to talk about.
Yes.
Yes.
Is Pavilion looking for,
Vendors?
yeah,
I think vendors can rent that. Is it only for agencies or is it for only for?
agencies?
No, I think it's for both. I think, I'm not 100% sure, now that you ask that.
That's their question.
No, I don't know if that is 100% accurate, that if I'm telling you, but I would go onto their website, but if not, I can look at it myself and get back to you. But that is something that houses thousands, like 85, 90,000 contracts in there that basically we can just do a Google keyword search and it will basically pull up for us that information.
I just pulled it up, it's for.
That's for both. Thank you. Okay.
You speak about piggybacking, does that only work for state side or federal also?
So, sorry, Marcel, I'm not trying to kill your, actually, can we hold that till we get to the piggyback part? Because I think that this is, because there's a lot more with piggybacking and cooperative, and they're not the same. So let's get to that part.
There is a slide,
Yep.
more information.
Yep.
And it might help answer your question.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions in regards to informal?
One question here.
Yes?
The informal threshold requires only one proposal, or do you have to send it out for multiple?
So for the informal threshold, we actually have to solicit it. So it will be a public bid and the department provides us with all the information and we double check it, make sure it has everything. And that way the vendor could actually respond back with what the department is looking for. So it is a sealed bid process on OpenGov, which we'll get to momentarily. So technically, as I mentioned, the first step here in regards to purchases from $0 to 5,000, there's no bid process. So under 5,000, it's just they get a
Take
quote.
a point and shoot and do one time, really kind of go to you and say, hey, I want to buy this. Give me a quote.
But the informal and then formal, we do have a sealed bid process on OpenGov, which we'll get into more details later.
To further answer your question though, sir, in regards to asking for the one quote, we had our code says that at least a minimum of 3 attempts, okay, from different vendors, a minimum of 3, it's in our code. And that, what that means is we have to send it out to a minimum of 3. We don't have to get a minimum of 3 responses, okay? So I have to at least send it out to a minimum of 3, but if I can't count on all 3 of them sending me something back. In this day and age, with us and with the technology that we have, you know, we get it sent to hundreds of people, and so we blow that far beyond exceeding the, you know, requirements of that for responses. But sometimes we still get 1 response back, believe it or not. You know, it's just crazy based on timing, who sees it. You know, a lot of those things come into play, or you're not aware. So again, today is something you're educating yourself on. It. You might be that one to add number 2 to our list or something like that. So, but it does happen. We will get 1 bid, and we will evaluate a response to determine if it's something. Why would we do that? To throw it out. If it's in market consideration of what we see, and it's a valuable, you know, or something necessity we need that we don't have time to go back out for it, and the department feels comfortable and it's a reputable person because we vet them through the process, then yeah, we'll move forward with a single quote on a contract like that.
Laura, you say you had a question?
We probably there's a student, I just want to confirm I heard this speak, so. Contracts.
Yes.
So is there any other questions at this time?
Are we have open mics on people that are online?
Yes.
That's the people that are guests? Okay. If anybody, if you could please all put your computers to mute, please. Go on.
Just 1 second.
I can go in and just mute them.
Oh, I just muted them now.
Okay. You can too, yes.
The town of Davie operating town or state bid preference to keep this still.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we'll talk about that.
So that is one of the upcoming slides. Is there any other questions in regards to informal thresholds before we continue? Okay, so now for the next category would be formal thresholds. So as you can see, this is for purchases over $35,000 and a penny. So these are considered ITBs, which are invitation to bid, RFP, which is a request for proposal, and RFQ, which is request for qualifications. So again, this will be a sealed bid process, which will be on OpenGov. And again, these thresholds are based on the Florida statute, which is there below. Does anybody have any questions in regards to this threshold? Yes?
Just want to make sure you say open go, that replaces demand star, right?
Correct. So we'll get to that shortly, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions about that. Any other questions at this time? So I actually wanted to show you here how we can find the procurement homepage. So I'm on the Town of Davie website under governments and departments, and I actually selected here procurement. So this page here is specifically the procurement information that you can find. On the left side, you can actually see some subtabs, which are very helpful.
I got stung by a bee that day. What? It was a bad picture, babe, but they did it anyway.
It's 2-dimensional.
It is. I look a lot different in this.
So this is the hub where you will find all the important and helpful information. Again, as I mentioned, this presentation will be available as well. So some of the few that I would like to highlight here is the second tab, but technically the first one, is the Town of Davie OpenGov bids and RFPs. And the next one will be contract solicitations prior to June 2024, which we'll get to shortly, and how to register for solicitations, and Supplier Central, and so forth. So the first section I want to go over is actually the Town of Davie OpenGov. So as you can see, as I have mentioned, in the second tab there, you can see that solicitations prior to June 2024, because all of our solicitations as of that time prior are actually on DemandStar and on our town website, which you could read here on this first paragraph, that since then we have transitioned over to OpenGov. Here is actually, I'm not sure, or anybody here, is anyone here familiar with OpenGov? Okay, that's great to hear. So in case nobody has registered before, or is not sure on what OpenGov is, here are the steps on how you could create an account and how you could actually find the Town of Davie and follow us. So in case nobody has heard of OpenGov or has registered before, I could actually show you that it's very simple. We actually have the link that you can click. And once you click there, you go to OpenGov. It'll ask you to either sign in or sign up. So I actually created an account to show you guys. I signed up myself. You get an email to activate your account, which is fairly smooth. Once you activate your account, it will ask you for all your business information. So this is very important because as you create this profile, it will actually be out in the public. So not only could other vendors see this information and your business information, but other agencies as well. And you want to make sure that you double check your spelling, double check your contact number, because again, this will be available for everyone to see. Does anybody have any questions in regards to setting up or has had any issues with setting up?
One thing with OpenGov though is they do need to go to our agency to follow us.
Yes, and I'll show that in the next
Okay.
slide. So this is just to activate your account. Once you activate your account, it'll actually give you a quick tour, which is very great because obviously if you're not familiar with the web page, you could have a step-by-step guide and it goes literally from each tab to inform you how simple it is. And I definitely recommend you all to take advantage of every tab and every useful tip and videos. In case you get lost or stuck or have any questions, there is a bubble on the bottom right where you could actually contact someone directly from OpenGov. So as you can see here, I created my account, and the next thing that we would want to do is set up our business. Again, this is very important because this is the information that's going to be available out to the public. And one of the most important things I'm going to bring to your attention is the category codes right here. The category codes is something that you will select based on your business type and the services that you provide. So the reason why I state it's very important because, for example, us here in the Town of Davie, when we publish a solicitation, we actually select category codes based on what we're looking for. So if you select, for example, if you provide plumbing services, like you mentioned earlier, you want to type in different synonyms for plumbing, water, piping, anything that might apply to your company, because again, that's keywords that other agencies can use, specifically ourselves as well. So that helps broadcast the solicitation, and it's a way to market your company as well.
So let me throw into that. So up to this point right now, how many people are registered with OpenGov? You said right now they're all registered with them as far as our, because OpenGov is kind of one of the new emerging software platforms that are out there. It's been DemandStar for a long time. Everybody's been living with DemandStar and it's been a great product. Don't get it. It's been free. It's been very affordable for you as a vendor, but it's low frills. Doesn't really provide us with a lot of actually extra value. So we made the move. There's Bonfire out there. They're Fleshy. There's usually two of them, by the way. You know, one person on the off, I get two of them. But so you have Bonfire, you have OpenGov, you have Ion Wave, bids and tenders. So you're like, oh my God, how do I get all this stuff and how do I get on these lists? Well, it's important, you know, to get on them because again, you get the email notifications from that. But, you know, DemandStar also pipes that stuff in too. So again, Demand Star is great from that notification piece. So we're not saying, sometimes actually even the open gov stuff that we're advertising goes out and it winds up on Demand Star somehow. I don't, it's weird. But that's your kind of plight. That's where you're chasing, right, all the time. And that's how do you manage this stuff from your, for these bids? So Marcella kind of hit it on the head right there as far as those category codes or those commodity codes. And they mean a lot to us. They mean because, again, that's what we're asking ourselves as Google search words of how do we find, certain vendors. We're looking for those keyword synonyms for your type of thing, which pulls up those categories that winds up sending you the notification. That's how you link to it. So let me ask you about, you're here today about how to do business with government, and expanding your mind and looking at projects and stuff. When you get some of these notifications, right? Do you only look for your field? And I ask that, do you only look in your lane? Do you not look outside of your lane? I ask this why. Because sometimes you may be a piece of that project. You might not be that whole thing. You may be just a segment of it. So what does that mean, right? Well, I'm not going to be able to bid on that project from the government side of it, but you may be able to bid on it from a subcontractor, right? So you can come in as a sub. So a lot of times when we're having pre-bid meetings or we're doing some of these projects, the room will be full. We'll have 25, 30 people sitting in a room, but we only really have 4 primes that are sitting in that room. The others are there looking at those primes, making those connections at the parking lot and saying, I want to bid on your job and I want those to get connected from that. So even if you are going after the whole pie, there is a piece of it that may be for you in some of the way you get connected too. So think about that on the folks that you're training on yours to look at some of these as opportunities that they might be paging past because they're like, well, this doesn't really fit in our lane. Well, your lane's in there. We just have to read it sometime a little bit deeper. Okay, just something to think about. Because we care about you doing business as well, and you could show up as a sub, and we've seen subs come through, and time again, and next thing you know, they're primes. They've grown into a prime position. They're like, we don't need to be a sub anymore. We've actually got this routine down, and that's what it comes down to. Is why do you see the same people in government bidding all the time? Because they learn the routine, the bureaucratic stuff that we have to put through it. It's like buying a car, all right? When you're buying a car nowadays, do you read all of the stuff they present to you at the light table that basically you're going, oh my God, or trying to buy a house and you're signing how many documents? You don't have time to do that a lot of times. We understand that. But you've got to take your time to read through the stuff and go through that and learn where your fatal flaws are. And there's some simple things we're going to teach you today as we're talking through this that can help you avoid that. Some of the things have been taken out of that altogether for you. Submitting late, you're out of it. You're not racing down at 595 anymore at the last minute and calling me and saying, I'm coming. And we used to have to turn people away. That doesn't happen anymore. If you don't basically submit online on time, we never even know you existed. So we don't see that. Some of them things have been electronic world of that. But you can screw yourself up by not submitting documentation. You can screw yourself up by not submitting all the paperwork and all the other things. So again, going through that process, making sure when you're a vendor, you're registering as a vendor or you're registering these systems, think about bigger than yourself. Think about what you want, to look at. So sometimes we might not have construction. I don't do construction, but I'm a cabling person that runs cabling for our IT network. Construction projects have that. So you would want to get a notification that to be there for a site visit. Just to, again, giving you some ideas of some things. So when you are looking at this stuff, depending on where you're at, look at the commodity fields, think about it a little bit bigger and what you want for notifications.
So we did have a question online.
Kevin was curious to.
What's that?
Just curious why we're transitioning from open gun to demand.
Okay, I'll take this one. Right. Thank you. So why did we transition? Demand Star is great for, again, very minimal services on basically getting receipt get back. But what it doesn't do for us is the behind the scenes for us. When we take a response back, it doesn't self-tabulate for us. It doesn't do a self-evaluation. We have some other really great factoring in what we have with OpenGov as far as when we're creating solicitations. There's a collaboration that our end users can work with us inside the document, building these templates and working on them, where we don't get that stuff in Demand Star. That's why we actually pay for it. And there's a lot more benefit to us from the things that we get from the efficiencies of building the solicitation all the way through evaluating it and awarding it. So that's why we made that decision. It was free for us before, but we actually, again, we have so many solicitations that are going out. We needed to find some streamlined methods for us for those efficiencies. So we don't end up paying for it, but we're seeing some great benefits. Would you agree with that, Marcella? I mean, you're seeing that as far as, that's a lot of the things that when our is now taking response, their way their busy work is changing because it's a lot of that stuff is automated and they can get it out to departments and turn it around and award things faster. So, a lot of benefit for us.
Yes?
So generally speaking, do government procurement departments generally only use one of these procurement sites? Could you use both Demand Star and OpenGov?
We used to use a couple of ways of broadcasting it out before, and again, it's redundancy that was, we're like, oh, we want to cover it, just shy of a banner plane flying around North Perry Airport or something like that, where I know everybody looks up for bids. But, no, we can send it out multiple ways, but it takes time for my team to have to load it up, put it in another solicitation on somewhere else, and then we have inconsistency issues. That if something forgot, if something didn't happen and get uploaded in here, but it got uploaded on here. So I only want a one-stop place that I'm sending it to. So we stopped putting it on our webpage, we stopped putting it on Civic Plus, and also on Demand Star. We only put it on OpenGov. So the only place you're gonna get that information on. So, and it's free access, so it's no cost for you, whatever, to be able to pull this stuff down.
So just to inform you, two main benefits on why I think OpenGov is better for the vendors compared to Demand Star. As Brian was stating, Demand Star obviously had different functions. So for example, if I put out a bid and put out an addendum, you would get notified that an addendum was published. And the difference is that with Demand Star, you would have to download it, sign it, upload it, and then sometimes people forget to upload the addendum. And this also goes for the submission. So the bid submission, you would have to download it, fill out the vendor registration, put in your bid responses, upload it. And there was so many errors there for the fact of people forgetting documents, not doing their calculations correctly for the bid table, and not signing things compared to OpenGov, which if there was an addendum, it actually makes you acknowledge it.
Do not pass go, do not collect $200. You can't move on. So that's a good thing for you. That stops you from, basically making a mistake. You just can't get past that. So if you don't get there, you're going to be sitting there looking at it at the end of the bidding time.
And just to add on to that, an addendum, in case nobody knows, is if there was a change to the contract, which the vendors have to acknowledge to ensure that they submit a reasonable response based off the changes. So obviously, there were some vendors that have not signed and uploaded the addendum, and that unfortunately caused them to be disqualified because that is a requirement. So that's one of the main differences. And also, as I mentioned, when you submit your bid table, like your bid response, because some people would not calculate correctly. And again, as Brian mentioned, that was very tedious for us when we had to do the calculations and reach out to the vendor and clarify, like, hey, which number were you really going for? Were you going for the unit price or the extended price? And there's been times where vendors have told us, hey, we actually submitted it correctly. Could we change it? No, we cannot change it. So that's another benefit that's great for the vendor is the fact that OpenGov does the calculations for you when you submit as well.
And it doesn't use Common Core math, because I think that some of the other folks in Common Core, I can figure out how to calculate some of them. But that's just my thought.
Before we continue, that pretty much gave a rundown on why we prefer OpenGov now. And I hope that answers your questions. Does anybody else have any questions before we proceed? Okay, great. So the next slide here, I just wanted to show you that when you edit your business in OpenGov, obviously you can add more commodity codes down the road. You can upload additional documents that will support your business. And you could also upload your W-9 and so forth. So this is beneficial for you because once you submit a response, we could actually see your business information. We can view your business profile and see all your information. So including your logo, see if you have any licenses, which could actually be an advantage to you. So definitely take the time to set up your vendor profile and add as much information as possible, because once we do our administrative review, we do give the information to the departments and they can go back and take the time to look at everything, especially when you submit for an RFP or an RFQ, because that's based off the overall value of the vendor. So definitely take the time to set up your account. Does anybody have any questions here?
Did you leave the slide in with the toolkit?
Similar, yes.
Okay.
So to move forward, I wanted to show you back on the town website, we already created our OpenGov profile, which was step number 1, but I wanted to show you that we actually have a live screen on our webpage, which shows you our solicitations. And as you can see, there's different statuses. And if you look at the title, it'll inform you what type of bid it is. So the cool thing here is obviously you can filter if you need to, but again, since you've already created your account, which we will continue on to step number 2. So step number 2 was actually following the Town of Davie in OpenGov. As you can see, I subscribed here to the Town of Davie, and you could actually change how you would like to be notified or what you would like to be notified with. So this is a benefit for you following not only us, but anybody else that you're interested in doing work with. So this is actually a huge tool that I recommend everyone to do. Follow the Town of Davie, because you'll get notified when things get posted. So you'll never miss an opportunity. Does anybody have any questions on this slide? So the next slide, I wanted to show you how you can follow a project. So I selected the project. On the left-hand side, you can see we could actually draft a response. And on the right-hand side, I'm actually able to follow the project. So the purpose of following the project is you can see if any notices or addendums are added. And then also, as Brian was stating earlier, if you're a smaller company that wants to reach out to like a general contractor, you can follow that bid, find out who was awarded the bid, contact them and let them know, hey, I've seen that you were awarded this bid, maybe I could provide you with this service based off the specification. Is there any questions at this time? So something else I want to bring to your attention as we look at this project, as you can see, there's different tabs. Obviously, you could go through these tabs to get more information, and you could also ask any questions there, and it will be publishing as an addendum for everyone to see.
So one thing with our contracts, and once they're awarded, barring any chapter 119. Everybody know what chapter 119 of the Florida statute means? Nope.
Silence.
Tone of silence, because really the 119 is the sunshine law. That's the open record law. And the tone of silence really falls more on local municipalities. A lot of times they don't have one for the sunshine. The sunshine is based on if you're a board member or a commissioner or an evaluation committee member, you're an ad hoc committee member. The sunshine law means that they have to have all communication in an open public meeting. So that's a sunshine law when it comes to that 119. But it also does with open records law. So 119 comes from that standpoint. So, anything that basically we have that is allowable under 119 that we don't have to redact or anything of that nature. Obviously, it's proprietary. We put on our website. We make it available for you because, again, we don't want to call in and say, hey, what's the tabulation? What's the, price of it? We want to be able to have self-service. We don't want to have you waiting for it and then, kind of having to get back to us and stuff like that. So we put so much content out on we even put the videos of our review committee meetings. There's a lot of stuff that you can actually see the valuation meeting and stuff like that through that and a WebEx, that we're doing it. You can see all of that on our pages. Our pages are content rich of the information that we put out for our bids. What does that mean to you? Well, if you didn't win a solicitation, you could go back and look through all the information and find out why. Do your kind of, hot wash on it to say, where can I do better? Because there's people that have come back to us after they haven't been in an evaluation process. They've gone through and they didn't prevail. They'd come back to us and say, hey, can we get a debrief with you and kind of find out a little bit deeper, where we could do better next time, or what was some of those things. They weren't challenging it. They were really trying to find out what they could legitimately do better. But a lot of times you can find that stuff here. You can also look at pricing of your competitors to see how that lines up, because you may be swinging and you may be like, keep swinging and this is not working out. Why is this not, working out for me? Maybe the market where you're at, it may be that, the margins you have don't line up with some of the times with government purchasing. It is what it is. I mean, it might be your lane might be very crowded. That's what I'm trying to say. And you may have to do some tuning on it. You may have to look at from your business side, what can I do? These guys are doing it. How do I get there? You still have to follow the contract. You still have to follow the performance of the agreement, but you should look at it.
I just have a quick question. Hans had mentioned cone of silence, which is obviously
Right.
what a lot of us are used to. Actually, this is two parts. So when we do a question answer sort of thing, do we get notifications when our question is answered, or is it just something that we have to keep up with? Like, does it get sent like a notification or alert gets sent to our email when our question's answered if the bid's open?
So I could answer that. So once you actually submit a question, stating that someone asked a question, and we actually have to approve the question. So we're acknowledging the question, which I believe you will be notified. And the protocol is we actually create an addendum and make it available for everybody to see. So it might not be a quick turnaround, because depending on the question, we might have to reach out to the department and get clarity on it. So, and then we could take into account the fact, like our hours, if it's a Thursday, it might have to wait till the following week. So just when you ask the question, don't expect to get a response the same day. So with that in mind, always, obviously we will later go over common mistakes, but something I would like to remind you is don't wait last minute to check out a bid, because you might have questions and you might not get an answer right away, and that could affect your response.
Mm-hmm.
You might not get an answer on all, because it may be past that time period. And it's not just to box you out of it. It's literally, it doesn't give everybody a fair enough time to respond. And, sometimes we get questions that are in the documentation itself. And what I suggest is when you're doing this, it's in PDF format. If you have a question about it, do a Control F. Look for that keyword search. I mean, and sometimes it's that easy to get your answer, because a lot of, we'll put a response back, see section 2.36. It's right here. That's there up front. Some of those things can save you time by just doing some simple, tools with using keyword searches or just some finds that may get you your answer. Because they're like, hey, there's a bond included in this. And it says first page, payment and performance bond. Control F would have saved a lot of extra steps to go through that process, okay? I mean, it happens. I mean, and look, I overlook things. I'm not perfect. I'm not trying to say it all, and I'm not mocking anybody, but, you know, we do get those, and you kind of want to take the pan and go whack, you know, it's okay, I get it. Someone's having a bad day. But, you know, again, take a look for yourself on that stuff, because some of our RFIs and stuff like that are basically pointing stuff back and reiterating. We do, if we do get something sometimes, it's after the fact. If it's something that's a burning issue with you, that's on, you know, and you're past the timeline, I would tell you submit it. All right? I'm gonna tell you sitting here, submit it. We're gonna read it. We may not respond to it. But if it's something that's so blatantly in our face that you're like pointing something to us that like, this is gonna fail, this is something, and you're trying to be the good guy about warning us, we'll look at it and we'll go, oh my God, you're right, wait a second. And it may cause us to stop and push it out longer because we've had that happen. We've had something that we all missed. Somebody's bought something and it was after the fact, but it was a critical issue that literally, so if you find that it's something that literally is a burning issue and it's going to be a problem for you to submit, or it's going to be a problem, still do it. Submit it. You may not get the answer, and it may be that it just kind of goes by. And I'm telling you from an agency standpoint, but I'm talking about a global standpoint too. Okay, I'm talking about from you're bidding across any other agency. The worst thing they're going to do is basically tell you, we're not going to answer it, or we're not going to do that. They're not going to throw you out of the process. All right? They're not going to say, hey, we're going to penalize you for that or do anything. That would be really stupid, right? But it may be something legit. You're bringing it to our attention. We've had it happen. So just a little 2 cents, because, you know, you could be catching that one thing that could take that solicitation up. And if they go forward with it, they could have an unbalanced response, or they could have something that could be causing a change order on day one. And you saw it, and you're like, well, I'm not taking that risk. But you could still bring it forward and correct that and still be in the game. Does that make sense?
Any questions on this slide before we proceed?
Another question, but it's not even big, so.
Okay, all right, yeah, we have a section in regards to common mistakes, which we will go over shortly. So we're actually gonna go back to our town website. And as I mentioned, we do have a tab here where you can find all of our solicitations prior to June 2024. So as we have mentioned, we recently transitioned to OpenGov, but you could still look back at solicitations on Civic Plus. So in case you do lawn maintenance, you can actually do Control F, and you can look at old solicitations that we published for lawn maintenance, just so you could read the solicitation and get some additional information. And I have another example here for roofing. So you could definitely take advantage of our old solicitations. And again, as mentioned, this is prior to June 2024. So everything after that will be available on OpenGov. So the reason why I bring this up is if there's a contract that ended and is going to get renewed, or they're putting out a new contract for it, I would advise you to check if it's either on OpenGov, depending how long ago we solicited, or check our town website to see what the response was previously, because we'll actually go to the next slide here. If you go ahead and find, for example, roofing, and you actually select the title, as Brian mentioned, we have everything available for the public. Again, this information is also on OpenGov, but it's just a different setup here. So you'll find all the information, and below you'll see all the documentation, which includes the original solicitation, who was at the pre-bid, bid opening report, the vendor's responses. You can see the final tabulation, who got awarded. So this is beneficial because you want to know your competition. You want to know what other people responded, and maybe you want to contact someone that went to the pre-bid as a networking tool. Does anybody have any questions in regards to this? Just to let you know, for all the bids that are posted on our website, it's the same format. Everything is available for your benefits. So you don't have to necessarily contact us, but in case you forget or you do, we will pretty much bring you back here and remind you that all this information is available.
And that was under procurement awards.
No, this is actually, I believe it's the third tab, which is the bids and solicitations prior to June 2024. So these are all of the things that were prior to OpenGov. So it's all available for your use.
We used to advertise on our main website, which is Civic Plus, they call it. It's the main webpage. And again, it has the most content. That's actually where we would have everything, where Demand Star wouldn't let us put videos and stuff like that, where our webpage would let us put everything. So we have all of that content, but now we put all of that content on OpenGov. So prior to June 24, you can go in, like she said, and do that Control F and look through basically all of our solicitations prior there. And again, it's that comparative. It's those kind of things that even Google searches, know your competition. If you're even bidding those out there in the market, you can even look, if there's another project out there, look, see what other agencies are bidding on that stuff. Look what they're paying for that. You can do your homework on it to see, you know, what's reality. Because if you're, you know, looking at it from one perspective, and you can wind up seeing how the hell did they come up with that pricing, it may be, again, you'll have to readjust on what your approach is on stuff. So, but we make it available for you. It is available for you, and it should be a tool that you can utilize.
So something else that I would like to clear up in case it caused some confusion, we have mentioned in previous slide that we were using Demand Star. So we also, just to let you know, we were posting on Demand Star and Civic Plus, which is our town website. So even though this is more easier for you to view, whatever was on Demand Star was on our town website. So you don't have to necessarily reference back to so many web pages.
Yeah, but I wouldn't recommend anything from Demand Star because we don't have everything on Demand Star. Like I said, I mean, we got the review committee meetings. I mean, who doesn't want to sit on a Friday night and watch a review committee meeting? I mean, come on, it's like Netflix. I mean, it's a really untapped thing. So, I mean, I'm just saying, I like Procurement like that.
So do we have any questions in regards to this slide before we proceed and information that's available for older bids? So we're going to go ahead and move forward. This is actually very informative for you, and this is building your toolkit. So this is pretty much like the steps that you need to that you're ready to bid on a solicitation. So the first thing is you definitely want to make sure you're active on Sunbiz or your state business registration site, because there has been situations where someone has submitted and they're not even really an active business. So that's definitely the first thing. The next thing would be to create an OpenGov account. And you definitely want to make sure that you verify all the information is accurate and up to date, because again, once we do receive our solicitations, the departments could contact your references. They could contact you, send you an email, check your website. So again, that's why you want to make sure that your OpenGov profile is nice and clean. So the next bullet point is know your competition. As I mentioned in the previous slide, you do have the ability to look at old solicitations, and you should definitely use that to your benefit, because if it's a contract that we're resoliciting, the chances of someone who solicited on the old contract if submitting again is fairly high. So you could definitely check it out. You can look at their bid response, check out their licenses, everything. Maybe there's something that they have that you don't that could benefit you. So the next thing is, again, as you want to contact your client references and ensure your references could be available for verification, because the departments will indeed contact your references and see how you performed and see if there was any issues, and pretty much obviously verify that the work was done with them. The next thing that we definitely recommend is to create a company overview as like a document, preferably like a PDF that you want to upload to your OpenGov profile, or you can provide when you submit a bid. And this is actually very important when you submit like for an RFP or an RFQ, because the departments will look at the overall picture. They'll look at all your information, such as your W-9 form, your company contacts, your mission statement, your organizational chart, your equipment list. Because if they see that you have things from 1990, they're probably not going to want to go with that. And they also want to make sure that you have a large variety of items. Also, it's a benefit to include your work history and recently completed projects and services. And images are always great to include in there. It also would be great for you to include the resumes of your key staff as they relate to the specific proposal. And if you have subcontractors, of course, include their information. And it's always good to include copies of your licenses and certifications, because not only for yourself, but for the subs, because that will inform us that obviously you are a company that knows what you're doing and you're pretty much vetted. Is there anything you would like to add to this?
So one of the things why we present this to you is that it's putting your best foot forward. They might not be asking for some of that stuff, but we tell you that it's like building a portfolio for yourself. It's what you're doing is showing them that, this is my company, this is what I'm about. And that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for, somebody all the time that is the best. We want somebody that can do the right price for the right service, right? We're looking at the lowest responsible bidder. But we want to make sure you have the right tools. Marcella went through it for you. And this right here is taking that extra step. That's going the extra mile is what this is. All right. So it answers some of the questions. And a lot of times, if they're not even asked for it and you're putting it in there, they're going to look and go, wow, this company is giving us more information than we're asking for. This is good because this gives us a comfort feeling of, like Marcella said, she talked about, your equipment. What kind of equipment? If you have a landscaping company and we have 37 square miles of town, okay, who knew Davie was that big, right? Everybody thinks Davie's pretty small. Everybody's like, hey, Davie's small. 37 square miles. It's a lot. We're one of the largest municipalities in the area. And when we put out landscaping, we have requirements for certain things. And some of it, we want to see their equipment list. We want to go through and we want to know that they have capabilities to do this. We want to see that list and we want to see what they have sometimes. We'll actually go to visit them, or we'll go look at the site and see how many things they have or what kind of equipment or what does it look like. Because we don't want to have stuff out there that is breaking down in the middle of a road that possibly hurt somebody or hurt, cause an accident. But we also don't want them building their business on this. Like, oh, well, I got the contract. Now I can basically go out and buy a few trucks and go find some people. And that's not the time to do it. All right. We want people that are in the business of doing this, that have a history, a track record of doing it. They're using public funds. They're not out there winging it and trying to learn it, or what do they say, fake it till you make it. That's not what we're asking for. We don't want that. All right. And that's not what we're trying. So we're trying to filter that down and get professionals that are doing this. And, we sometimes we'll look at prices too when we're looking at this, and we'll see that they're coming in way lower, and there's no way that everybody is in that range. So there's a problem there, and they could be an estimator issue. We make them back and ask. Your number is right. You 100%. You have a chance to back out of this now, because once we award you, we're handing this to you. We're expecting you to perform. So, those are things when you're going through. Build this as a kind of a like I said, a toolkit, but use that information to your advantage. A lot of times we're asking for this stuff, so if you have it readily available and fresh and clean, up to date, it could change, it could make the difference of basically their perspective of what they're looking at, saying this company is somebody that could do this or not. You're just putting a number in there and saying this is what we do, and we didn't really hit those key pieces. references, clients, things of that nature. Tell them you're bidding on a project. Be available to answer a question or something of that nature. We've tried sometimes and chase clients down, client references or things like that, and nobody's ever gotten back to us. That tells us something too. If you're not staying on top of it, maybe they don't want to tell us something. Maybe they're just being kind to you, but maybe they got something else of an issue. Those things are real, and we've had that where we've not been able to get any client references. But, oh, wait, they weren't even doing it when we talked to the prime company that they were talking. They weren't the prime, they were a sub on there. So make sure you're aware of who you're talking to from your references and that you are a prime or you're not a secondary or you're giving us the right information on those client references. Okay? Relative information so that we can compare it, that we know that we're going into a contract with somebody that has experience doing this. We don't want there's nothing wrong with having a startup company, but there are certain ones that we are not going to take risks on for the reasons of that it's public safety. And that's what it comes down to. And why do you say public safety a median? Absolutely. Have a guy come off with a lawnmower into a third lane of a car, that's gonna hurt somebody as a resident, maybe your employee just the same. We don't want to have that. We don't want to have that potential even. We don't want to have our water utility having somebody in there with a new company doing something with our drinking water. We don't want those types of things. We want professionals that are experienced in doing business. So it's not always about low bid. It's not always about that stigma that people say, oh, well, it's just government, it's low bid. There may be some agencies that act like that, but that's not the Town of Davie. Okay, that is not the Town of Davie. We look at the lowest responsible bidder that can do the job at the town for the best overall value. Okay, so that's kind of my part on this.
I think we have a question online.
Good.
Anybody have any questions in regards to the toolkit?
Does anybody have a toolkit? You do? Good, good. Do you have everything on here or do you have? That's awesome. And that's another thing is when you're submitting this stuff, have somebody else look at it. Don't just do it yourself or have one person say, go do it and submit it. Have somebody else check it. The biggest thing we see with vendor submissions on this is they call us the city of Davie, all right? They call us basically, or we're called Parkland, or we're the town of Parkland, or they control F and replace, and they don't get them all. Whoever's doing this, go through and vet that. Little things like that chip away at the fabric of your response. You think that might be petty, but on the other side of it, it shows your level of detail and a commitment you're doing this. Are you just phoning it in and changing this stuff and I'm just regurgitating it to somebody else? That's all you put into it, and you're just piping it to the next one. Sometimes that's how it looks at it. That's true. And reality is true when it comes, our perception is reality on that. All right. So have somebody check it out. Have somebody else go through it. Cross the T's, dot the I's. Devil's in the details on this stuff. When you don't go through your own stuff and then our people go through it and start to see all this stuff and it doesn't add up, it's one thing. But it also, when it goes to our council and they see the city of Davie, that's even just a very tick-off thing that it's very nitnoid kind of thing like that, but it just, again, sours it. So go through your response, make sure you take your time and don't be submitting it up against when you rush, speed kills on that stuff. That's all there is to it. And, one of the things you always have the option of, and I'm not saying that you're going to get it, but if it seems like there's a timeline that's too tight for even reality, ask for the extension. Ask for basically, can you extend the timeline? Sometimes an agency will be up against it, and there might be some things that they're working on, and they might tell you, we're working on this, or they're going to extend it. They may tell you that. They may extend it, because they might be up against a lot of questions as well. But ask the question, because it may be something that they'll do. Or they might just say, we're not extending the timeline. That is what it is, but it doesn't hurt to ask, okay? Because if you're jammed up, and again, you can't take the time to do it correctly, you're gonna be dealing with that risk later, and it could be working against you, because when you go to they look at your response and how did you answer, well, I rushed it. I didn't get the answers. You didn't really have the time to prepare. So make sure you're taking the time preparing. And if you can't and you're up against it, ask the question. Ask if I can have more time. Or can we have more time? Can you extend this? And again, it may be a yes. We've done it. Some agencies might not do it. But we will look at it and see the complexity. We will look at the questions. And we will see that if there are some things that we're having to hunt down, we will change the date on it, and that will be in an addendum. Or we will put in the addendum, timeline stays and remains the same. Anything to add to that? Because you've done that too, I mean.
Yeah, of course. So that's pretty much it, unless anybody else has any additional questions, yes?
On the requested extensions thing, so does the town have a preset time? Like, let's say we request an extension, does the town say at minimum has to be a week, or can we request a certain date? Is it that?
We typically, what we'll do is, you can ask for that. You can ask for anything. You can ask for, but, and they might agree. Time, and if you're saying I need 2 more weeks, that at least tells us, because we're in our head, if you ask for a timeline, I don't know what that means either. So I think that that's a great question to ask is, can it be 2 more weeks? But be realistic about it. Again, we got departments with projects, timelines, grants, things that basically that are behind us, pushing certain levers happening along the way. But, ask the question, absolutely ask that question, because a lot of times, I'll look at Marcella and I'm like, we're not going to get these answered. We're going to be against it. We need to extend this. Go ahead and put it out for 2 more weeks, or put it out for another 10 days, or put it out for, what's fair and reasonable for people to respond back. So again, we want to be as transparent with this information as well. And we're not trying to put you against any game of forcing you to do something. Sometimes we don't know what it's going to take to do this. And sometimes we get people that are coming in at the last minute, just starting and asking for that extension. And it's been quiet or questions, and nobody else is asking for it. And we're not going to do it. That's one of my things is, how many people have asked for an extension? Is this really something we're getting pressured to do? And if we're not, we're going to make a judgment call on it. And if it doesn't have an impact, we may do it. We may just hold the line. So, because that could be the other side of it. We just picked it up today and it's due in 7 days. Yeah. So, okay.
So just to add on to that, some things that we do take into consideration, one of the cool tools that Gov provides to us is a vendor analytics. So even though it is a sealed bid, we can see how many people selected no bid or actually submitted. Again, we don't necessarily see what they submitted, but if you ask for an extension and we see like 6 people already submitted, then it's like, bring that up to Brian, and there might not be a chance for the fact that other people were able to and couldn't. Obviously we'll take it into consideration, but it all depends, of course. Any additional questions at this time? So the next bid, I just wanted to show you our supplier central. Again, we're back on the procurement homepage. We're on like the 3rd or 4th tab now. And this is very important for you because you can actually see we have frequently asked questions and our document center. So again, you could see our vendor requirement guide, our W-9 form in case you want to add it to your toolkit. We also have our policy and procedures manual and a bunch of helpful information here. So in case you want to take the time and really prepare a good toolkit and prepare a good solicitation, you can always double check our information here as well. Anybody have any questions in regards to this? And just to let you know, if you guys wanted to attend another vendor training, this is also a frequently asked question here. We do have it quarterly, but again, this will be available online.
And the video's gonna be here too, right?
Correct. Kiana, is it? I'm not sure if it's.
Yes, exactly. Nice class to start in, absolutely.
This is.
Yes, supplier, click open supplier, so I'm sure that. This presentation will be there.
So the next slide here is for vendor registration. We do get calls sometimes where vendors call us and they contact us asking if they could get on our vendor registration list. Some agencies might provide that, but we technically don't have a vendor registration list. The only time that we will request you to fill out a vendor registration is once you actually have been awarded a recommendation of award. So at that time, we'll send you the award recommendation, and this would be technically the next step. So again, we don't have a vendor registration list. This is a free website for you to sign up in. We will send you an invitation. And as you can see here, as per the screen, it is secured and it's a great way for us to verify your information, because before we were only receiving everything on a vendor registration form, which wasn't exactly secure, and sometimes it could be fraudulent as well.
We've had a past, over the last year, in the government side, some of you might have read in the newspaper, some agencies that have been, cyber attacked by basically, bad actors who've gone into your website or your, financial systems and your computers and hacked your vendor registrations for different agencies. And they've gone in and changed the vendor registration document that you submitted to, say, for the Town of Davie, where they're changing the routing number for your ACH payments. So you're not even getting, so you won't even know until basically you get 3 emails that says, hey, I've been paid or whatever, and you go to check your bank account for the deposit and it's not there, and you call us up and we're like, what do you mean? We sent that ACH. Well, we sent a registration, we got a registration that says change this ACH, we sent it to this routing number. It's your signature on it. It's the same as the last signature. They're like, no, but they've gone and manipulated it. That's real. That's happened. And that's happened at the tune of several $1 million across the nation. So what the town did was put this platform in place. It's called Payment Works. And Payment Works allows us to safely pay anybody through an ACH payment process. And they do a scrubbing from the first side of it, make sure you're a legitimate business. And then when we go to pay you, they do all kinds of Willy Wonka stuff behind the scenes that we don't even know what they do. It's very proprietary, but they indemnify every payment that we make at ACH up to $2 million. So they are pretty confident that we're paying the right people. And that saves us from embarrassment and also paying bad actors, people corrupting the system. So if you want to get registered in this, and paid by the town through this process, through, a check or an ACH, you have to go through this process. And this is a newer process. And Laura, can you speak on this? Because Laura in the back corner there is your biggest tour guide on this, because a lot of times going through it, we get people that, will get confused with some of the registration process or not submit the right documentation. And it takes some back and forth to get into the system. But again, it delves into detail, reading that, what we're asking for, levels of insurance, guys. Levels of our insurance. You got to make sure you have our levels of insurance. And then usually it's $1 million, general liability and umbrella. And then we have, different thresholds from there. It's on our documentation, but you have to match it. If you don't have our insurance to start with, then that's going to be a problem. Okay? That is rule number one. And I can see from most of you in the room, that hopefully you have those insurances, even if you have all, We need to see that automotive. And why do I need automotive? You're coming on site, you're a contractor, you are, a business that's coming to the town. You're not just Joe Public when it comes to that, you are a contractor. So again, we need to have those. If you're exempt from work for comp, you don't have the criteria or you have an exemption from the state. Make sure, again, you have that exemption and submit it to us. Go through those things. And if you don't know an exemption is required, if you have that, or you don't know about the exemption, then you need to find out, call the state and get that exemption filed for yourself so that we can put it in our system. Because, workman's comp, our risk management will put a hard stop on us until we can get those insurance levels where we need, or we'll have to talk to them. And if there's some calibration that we need, but they're not going to easily make those adjustments. It really has to be something compelling for our risk to change our levels of insurance. Okay?
So just to add on to that, Brian mentioned the town requirements are included in the bid on OpenGov. So you can always double check that before you submit as well. And obviously contact your insurance company and make the changes before you submit, because that's one of the documents that you do have to submit with your response.
And we have some sample documentation in there. Like, for example, silly little things like naming us as additional insured, putting the contract number on, doing those things on your certificates. Your insurance companies, if you send them that document as a sample and say, hey, I need this, make sure you point those things out, because again, there's certain things that we've even put arrows, like obvious arrows, like do this with 2 arrows going this way, and we still get it blank. So, go through those things, make sure that whoever you're talking to from your broker, say, please, I need to have this. If not, I'm coming back to you again, because they're gonna ask me if I don't have it. Or if they don't give it to you when you get it, receipt of that, make sure it's all there before you submit it to us. It's only gonna slow you down, and slowing you down can get to the point where we are going to move on to another award. Because if you're dragging your feet and you can't get things done, what is that telling me? This is the first step in the door, and you're starting off on a bad foot with this, right? You're basically not getting things done. You're not, and that's not where we want to be. We want to be in a good step with that. So don't start that trend early, at all. But I'm just telling you, don't start that trend, because it will build from there. We look at that stuff, and we waived off contracts for people that certainly couldn't get things done. And if they can get it done from the administrative side of things, they sure as hell are not going to get it done from the business side of things. All right. So just to think about that. And that does always create concern for us when we're looking at that, on how fast you're responsive to things. Because what is that going to mean for us in our long relationship, in our working together?
Any other questions in regards to payment works before we continue? So as I mentioned, you will only get this vendor registration invite if you are one of the vendors that are recommended for award. So I did include here pretty much how that email will look. It'll inform you, the Town of Davie is using this platform. Please go ahead and complete your registration. So the correct protocol is usually when we actually are at the time of award recommendation, we'll publish it online, and we'll also email you directly with the document informing you that you will receive this email. So again, as Brian mentioned, you want to do things in a timely manner, because it is possible that you could have mistakes. It is possible, just so many things that we look at here. And that's actually one of the common mistakes that we'll look at in the next slide. But it's fairly easy, it's simple, it's free, and it's for your benefit. So something that Brian mentioned was common mistakes. So the first bullet here you can see is the certificate of insurance. And as he did mention, not only when you do your payment works vendor registration, but also in the OpenGov portal, we have the text literally of what you need requirements that you meet. We also have a example document for you to use and to send to your insurance company. But then again, we consistently have the same issues, and Laura, unfortunately, has to return so many submissions, and it's just a whole lot of back and forth, and it could easily be avoided by really just taking an extra second and looking. But the most common mistake is the contract details in the description, because obviously we want to know what is this insurance for exactly. And then also adding the town as additionally insured and the town as a certificate holder. Another thing is the fact that when it comes to adding them as additionally insured, you see the Ys circled in red circles. I'm sorry, yeah, circled in red circles. That's something that everyone always forgets as well. It's very important, but then again, it's so important because we cannot proceed unless this is completed correctly. And Laura spent so much time on this, and if you want to give us an idea.
Yeah, basically, the column for additional insured means that there is an additional insured to the policy. And then in the description below, it's supposed to list who the additional insured is. So you have to have both. You can't just have one or the other. They both have to be there. So the indicator in the column has to be there, the town duty has to be listed in the bottom of the description there, and also a certificate holder. Those three items are pretty much first three together.
And before I actually became procurement manager, I was actually, I had hair like Laura's and then basically, doing vendor master stuff.
So the next common mistake is last minute bid submissions. So obviously when we solicit a bid, it's gonna have the date that we broadcasted it, there's gonna be a deadline for RFIs, and then also a deadline for your submission. So Brian had mentioned earlier that it's very bad practice to look at something last minute because you would have a question and then realistically you might have already missed that RFI period. So again, as I showed you in previous slides, you could actually follow a project, have that there on your main page and create a calendar reminder, whatever you need to do to make sure that you don't miss on this opportunity. Another common mistake is that people don't verify their bid response prior to submission. I have mentioned earlier that I've had a vendor actually submit their pricing table and apparently they missed a zero. So instead of it being 10,000, they actually submitted 1,000. And the department actually questioned me about it and was like, hey, this is actually really low for what it is. I went ahead and contacted the vendor. They said, hey, I did it wrong. Can I change it? Can't change it. But you submitted, either you could honor the pricing or you just have to withdraw from the solicitation. So always double check it. And again, that kind of goes hand in hand when submitting last minute bids as well. As Brian stated, speed does kill. So take your time because it has so many benefits for you to be awarded a contract. Because like we mentioned earlier, even though the town could piggyback from other cities could also piggyback off the bus. So you taking time to really make sure that you don't hit these common mistakes is very important. The next bullet is mandatory pre-bid meetings. There are certain bids that do require a mandatory pre-bid meeting, depending on what it is. So, for example, if there's a roofing job, we might have, obviously, whoever's interested to come meet us out there, even though we could provide photos and videos. There's some people that just want to take their own measurements and stuff. So, and especially if it's not open to the public, we will have a mandatory pre-bid meeting. So keep in mind, mandatory. If you're not there, you can't bid. And we definitely do check that on the back end when you submit your bid. So yeah, you can go ahead and submit your bid, but we'll check if you signed in. And if you didn't sign in, you kind of lost your chance there.
And we actually, once we start the meeting, we take the sign-in sheet. And we've had people come in at like 10 minutes before the end of the free bid. And they're like, oh, let me get the sign-in sheet. Like, you didn't hear anything. How is that possible? We're not doing that. All right. So we take the sign-in sheet when we start talking, we take the sign-in sheet away. You're not basically going to be participating in this. So we go through that, so if you don't show up, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to explain to the boss that, hey, I'm sorry, I did not get there on time. Because like I said, 15 minutes in, 5 minutes, where do I draw the line? You know, where does that line have to stop? That line stops when we start that meeting. That's all there is to it. That's, again, I hate it, because I don't like being, where people are in awkward situations that, life happens, I get it, but how many times do we have to sit there and do this? It's hard for us from that standpoint. We're human as well. We don't want to see people fail. You could be a valuable submission for us. You could be probably the best submission, and it was one of those certain circumstances. But we have to have the sanctity of the process, and that's why we're neutral in all of this. So it's not Marcella's a problem. It's not her fault. I'm the one that basically says that's what happens. We don't let basically anybody come in after that point. So it's not on them, and I'm not going to waver on that because again, it is unfair to you. You showed up on time, and now somebody else is walking in, and now they're still in the process of this. This is the things that we have to deal with on some of these procurements. And the bigger the dollars, obviously the stakes go up when it comes to this stuff. So,
So just to add on to that, I have scenarios where obviously someone came in like 5 minutes late. But just to inform you, we do have some consideration. So if we said the meeting starts at 10, we wait at least like 3 minutes, because realistically, you should be punctual, you should be responsible and be here on time. Again, as Brian mentioned, that's kind of your foot in the door, and that represents you as a company. So if you do plan on coming to a pre-bid, take into consideration traffic, check it out on the map, see how long it's going to take you. Because at the end of the day, we want to make it fair for everybody. And the last, or at least not to say there's many common mistakes, but these are the most common mistakes that pop out to us. It was in regards to payment works, vendor registration that we just recently spoke about. As we mentioned that they do some verifications to confirm that it, and one of the main verifications they do is they contact you directly to verify your banking information, because obviously, as Brian mentioned, we have the ability, well, you technically have the ability to either get paid by ACH or by check. So if you're getting paid by ACH, most likely payment works will contact you to verify your account information. And again, it's very important that you include the correct information, because I'm not really sure their protocol, but they might do a Google search and look for the main number as well.
phone number within office, right?
Yep. Or online search.
Well, mine is a national, so would it be the branch or?
They gotta be able to call somebody and verify that it's a company. I mean, it's not the only testing they do. They do several, methods of testing on this, but they want to have a phone number that connects to a building, not a cell phone, not something else. They want somebody that legitimately can call a business that they can serve.
Branch physical.
But they can find it from a listing on the internet or something like that, that they can call. Yes.
Whichever one, it would be up to you guys to decide.
Again, which one they're calling. They do a whole vetting behind the scenes as well. So we have requirements that legislation has put in place on us, such as non-trafficking, okay? Any of you human traffickers? No? All right, I'll get back. Things have changed nowadays. I'm not sure. But we actually have to ask somebody, do they human traffic, all right? I'm gonna be surprised when I see the one that says yes. But again, this is something that we've been legislatively imposed on to put this into our bid documents. And, it's another tripping point for you as a vendor to forget that documentation. And that's the stuff that we want to make sure you're following up on and you're going through these. And then some of the stuff, we have discriminated parties, the Sudan, there's things that all these things that you're like, why am I signing all this stuff? And, well, that is the bureaucracy of the legislation of even the higher government, even FEMA and all these other branches that we're getting the funding sources from have these requirements. And if you just, I'm not gonna fill that out, I'll leave it blank. That's not gonna work, all right? Ask questions, you have it on our 5 period. Get that to us, don't forget it. Get some help to fill it out, do whatever you need, but those documentations, if we're asking for them, submit them with your package. And I know that some of the stuff is built on the requirements of our funding, and some of them are very legislative that we have to just comply and check the boxes on. Okay, the last one that we just got with the human trafficking one, it's rail and everything, it's a whole affidavit that you have to actually print it out, notarize it, attest it. I mean, I think you have to put a blood fingerprint on, like John Wick or something. I'm not even sure, but I mean, it's one of these ones that are becoming a little bit over the top, but it's not your agent, your government agencies that are doing it. This is some, bureaucratic imposements on us. They have absolutely good intent. I'm all for that. I attest anything to that. I don't want to joke about that aspect of things, but I just sit there and go, okay, wait a minute, enough is enough on some of these. How are we being, pushed into this from a vendor side of it, doing business? I just don't think that anybody's going to respond to it saying yes, or, that they're going to make that. I don't think that they're going to submit. But anyway, somebody had a question or yes?
I have 2 questions. The first one is regarding the affidavit, and then I know there's a domestic partnership going strong.
Right. Well, some of them.
Yeah.
Some of them, not all
When we submit that, does that respond on the day today I submit it? Another one comes out 2 months again. Do I have to resubmit that?
Yeah.
again?
Yeah, things could change. I mean, honestly, you could start human trafficking. Yeah, I'm only joking. But no, that is a thing that a lot of times we get the same thing. It's how come I gotta keep repeating these things, filling out this documentation? Can't I just keep it in a static database? No, because every single time we do it, we go with new contract. It's the status we did during that contract process.
And then my second question was, a lot of other agencies, especially in Florida, they have like disqualifications where they disbar you for 6 months if you incorrectly respond too many times. Does Town of Davie impose?
No. We hopefully try to educate you to the point where you don't do that. A lot of times you burn yourself out and you stop doing it after it, and you have 6 times at that point. But no, I mean, we do have a debarment process, and we do have a page on our website that has nobody on it, as far as the wall of shame. The disbarment aspect of it, we do have that process. We use it with respect when it comes to if somebody actually is going to be, a disbarment. That will come with a price on you if you are bidding on projects and you are disbarred and you do not submit that, and later on, if you're a federally funded project and that comes up, you will pay the price on it on several levels. And so be truthful of it. If it happens, just don't want to be there. Really try to mitigate that as much as possible. There is a due process for disbarment. If they don't have it and they just say you're disbarred today, then I would be fighting that immediately, because there is a process that needs to be followed in the disbarment. Basically, you have to have like for us, if we're going to, you have to show, you'll sit in front of a special magistrate and be heard, so that you have a fair process. Because again, you show up on a federal project, you don't submit, check that box, that yes, you've been disbarred. Even thinking it's Town of Davie, they're small, nobody's ever going to hear from them or whatever. You want to roll the dice with it, and they do a Google search and you show up on that, you're going to be in more trouble than you started. So, just to say. That answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So something I want to add to this, common mistakes, and which also kind of ties in with how to maintain your contract. Some vendors will submit their bid response, they get awarded, and then the contract terms and conditions just kind of just goes over their head, they forget everything. So that's definitely a common mistake that a lot of vendors come across, especially when we are verifying pricing on the invoice side, which procurement agents also do as well. So you want to make sure that even after you get awarded, obviously the time process could be a little lengthy at times. You just really want to make sure that you are aware of the terms and conditions and you are aware of the important information on there. Is there anything you would like to add to that?
One of the things when you get awarded a contract, it doesn't matter if it's the Town of Davie or anywhere, go through that close the loop process on your side. That's one of the things that we see happen fall short all the time, especially if it's a, for example, Servpro. I'm going to pick on you right now, and no past experience. It's just one of these things. You're a large company, right? I mean, as far as how many companies you got in this area?
I have 4 locations.
Was that?
I have 4 locations personally, but
So you're in a franchise store?
yeah.
Okay.
So it's 2,000.
So that's an interesting scenario. Because if we went out, we basically did restoration services. That's typically what's called, right? Restoration services for any of those solicitations. And they go in and somebody's house gets blown up, their toilet basically has some issue from our water plant that basically causes it to overflow and floods their bathroom. In that scenario, we would have a restoration services contract. One thing that's important, when you get awarded that contract, that you're going to your accounts payable people, you're going to your call center people, you're talking to the people that need to be aware that that contract exists now. Do you have an internal process that you go through when you're awarded that contract that says, here's that agreement, please load it in the system, make sure we're billing the Town of Davie according to this contract, this terms and conditions? And do you need to set up with the payment people, to make sure that they're billing it correctly? Anything that's sent out, do they have it to the right people? Are they sending the email to the right addresses? That stuff from the administrative side, we see falls short. And a lot of times, things that happen, the first invoice that comes out is incorrect because it's just your standard invoice price. It's not something that it's coming out of a book from wherever the price. Make sure ours gets loaded. All right. That will not be that first step. Here's our put your first foot forward kind of thing like that. That kind of thing like that, starting off with wrong price, that's never going to be a good thing. That tells us that you didn't close the loop. Make sure that all those things are in place. Know who your communication is from our side of the town. Know our project managers. Know who you're dealing with. So that relationship starts off on a good foot. So if they're not doing that from the department, force it from the other way. Come back and say, hey, I'd like to at least sit down with you and do a kickoff meeting. I want to know these things, or I want to, and I'm talking about outside the Town of Davie, all right? We try to do the kickoff meetings. We try to do these with our departments. We have them doing them. But I'm saying from a general practice of yourself is get to know those project managers, get to know the people you're going to be working with so that you have that relationship. And they also know who you are. Because then, you go away and then a week later, they're going to be like, who are you? Make sure they know who you are. And so you're in their face, because if you're in a pool contract, then they might not be calling you first. They might be calling somebody else. But do your part. Don't just wait for it to come to you. And make sure on your side of the business that you're setting up everything and getting that. Once you have all that award documentation and everything you need, get us set up in your system. Because if not, Marcel is going to be calling somebody and going, hey, how come this pricing isn't right? And this is delaying your payment. We do not pay you until we don't consider a prompt payment start until we actually have an accurate invoice. So the longer you kicking that invoice back to, we're kicking it back to you, we're not accepting it. And we have a turnaround time to get it back to you as well. But if you're not providing us an accurate invoice we are not on the clock yet. All right, so you can't come and say, you gotta pay me in 30 days. I don't have to pay you on a wrong invoice. I have to pay you on a correct invoice within 30 days. I'm not paying you until I have a correct invoice. And we're not doing rounding. We're not doing Common Core math. We're not doing all these other things. We want what that contract pricing says. And Marcella will make sure, and Marcella has,
Even if it's 2 pennies
she
off.
doesn't give up.
you have to send it back.
Did anybody see the office space? Okay? Office space is one of the ones I tell them all the time, all right? That rounding does not work, all right? It adds up. It adds up after a while. Even pennies add up. So it's one of those things for us. We go down and we make sure that if it comes back and it doesn't add what we say, want to know how you got there. So.
Is there any additional questions in regards to common mistakes before we proceed? So the next slide is terms to know. Somebody did ask a question in regards to local preference. So we actually do have a local preference. So either if you're a Town of Davie vendor or a local Broward County vendor. Brian, would you like to touch more on this?
So, yeah, we did ask about the local preference, if there was any. Okay, so we do have, huh?
Hold on, Brian.
Yep. So we do have two types of, our council here put this in place before I got here. And of all the municipalities, I've been doing procurement for almost 30 years now. I think this is probably, and I'm maybe biased, but it's actually a very good local preference because some of them, I don't think, I've read a lot of them and stuff like that, and I'm not sure that they always equal out to your benefit. This one actually, I think, is fair. And what it says is that if you're a local vendor in the town of Davie, and you have a brick and mortar presence in our, or you're a local, you're here in the town and you have a business license with us, you have 5%. So we're going to evaluate you. If you're coming in number 2 and you're within 5% of the lowest bidder, we're going to give you a chance to do a BAFO, a best in final. Now, that's an offer. It doesn't mean that you have to. You might be, your margins may be tighter than you just gave us the best. We accept that. That's fine. Just say, I can't do it. But if you can come in 1% lower than the lowest bidder, then you can be awarded that contract. But you have to come in 1% lower than that bidder. But again, sometimes it doesn't line up. It doesn't line up from that. With Broward County, we assess that same credit based on a 2.5% evaluation factor. So if you're now within 2.5%, then basically, and now there's also multiples. We have, sometimes we'll get Davie, sometimes we'll get Broward, and we have to look at those too. So we'll calculate those based on where the vendors are sitting. So we don't get it a lot. It doesn't come into play with us, but again, we always look at it. It's not like it's with every one of our submissions. We see it probably, how many times have you done BAFOs?
I've been here almost 2 years and I've only seen one BAFO.
Yeah, so it's not, it doesn't occur a lot, but if you're a local vendor here and you have a store and location and you're bidding on this, pay attention to it. And again, if it's something that is a bid, an ITB, we're going to be using these numbers. But if we're going to be looking at it from a proposal, an RFP, or RFQ or something like that, we take it into consideration. Because there's our evaluation criteria that we don't assign points with our evaluation criteria. We do it as what's called ordinal ranking. Is anybody familiar with the RFP process? Or yes? Anybody not familiar with it, real quick? Okay. All right, so when we do our evaluation with an RFP, we don't use a 100-point scale. All right, a lot of places use the 100-point scale. They take like 5 different evaluation criteria, and one of them will be past performance, and they'll assign it maybe like a 15, right? They'll do more 10 or 15, depending on the importance of what they feel that criteria is. We don't use that methodology. I find that methodology flawed because your number 7, if you're evaluating something, and my number 5, may be in our minds exactly the same. I might be just, a bad, I might be a low scorer because I'm more critical on thinking. Whereas you're like, oh, I think that they were okay. I'm going to give them a number 7. But if you ask us, we exactly say the same thing. And that could be a problem. And it's just a perspective. It's very subjective. The way we do it is what's called ordinal ranking. In ordinal ranking, we take all of the evaluation criteria from past performance, some of the other ones, and basically your financial capacity, your capability, projects that you had, your scope, your approach on things. We take all of those criteria and sandwich them together, and we tell our evaluators that give us your number 1. Who's your top ranked? Who is your number 1? Based on those evaluation criteria. In your mind, I'm sure, just thinking about it, you can tell me who's number 1 pretty quickly, right? You could say, yeah, I looked at all of them and I can see that one clearly stands out above. They're my number 1. They're my number 2. They're my number 3. And that's how they rank them. They rank them through an ordinal process. And then we take those, we add them together, or we average them together, and we get the lowest score is the top ranked. So you have a 3, and basically that's going to be all number 1s from a panel of 3, right? That's going to be my average or whatever it comes out to if we're doing that averaging. But the low score is really your top ranked score. Everybody understand that process? Again, it's just a lot easier way for our evaluators to say, this is my top rank. And they don't have to really break this down into, because a lot of times they're starting to play with numbers and they're trying to get there to be the top scorer. And what they wind up doing is throwing the whole formula off. And we've seen other agencies that even done like 5 evaluation criteria, and pricing is the 5th evaluation criteria. And they'll assign your points based on your price. So if you're the lowest price, they'll give you the top score for that. And that isn't fair because it's not about the price. It's about the best overall solution. So when you do that, you could throw the number 1 person out of the running just because their price was a little bit higher. That skews scoring. So our methodology that we believe here is the fairest process in that aspect of it. At least the evaluators can make a determination on their recommendation based on a simple concept of who's number 1, who's your number 1, who's your top ranked. So, that process is something that when you're looking at these evaluations and going through these, be mindful of that, of how be involved in that evaluation process, be involved in that, not be afraid to ask questions on it. So again, our local preference, how we're evaluating those, we take that into consideration from the RFPs, but they are hard numbers and percentages we use on evaluations for numbers.
For RFPs, let's say I'm the prime and I'm working with a subcontractor to a local vendor. Qualify the total or,
Yeah. You're the prime and you're taking the lead, you're the one that basically has your, yeah.
Follow somewhat of your criteria.
What's that?
For example, for my example, you guys are having the city hall, and obviously I want to be a subcontractor for that. Does the prime have to kind of have some sort of like loyalty to local, or doesn't matter?
No. Some grants require it.
Yeah.
Some grants have requirements for preferences. They are goals. It depends. There's goal requirements and sometimes they have requirements. But sometimes you put these requirements in place and you get nothing because it just doesn't happen. So they call them goals. So a lot of times it depends, it really has to be the agency, but again, if you're in a category of, any of those, put everything you can into, like I said, because some agents, it depends. We don't have a MWE program in here. We don't have that for the town. We have a local preference. But we sometimes, some of our solicitations have MWE requirements because of the funding. So it has to do with the grant. So again, reading it through, and if you're in that, that could be an elevated game for you too.
Any other questions in regards to local preference? If not, we will proceed on to piggyback. I know this is something that a lot of people have questions on. In case you're not aware of what piggybacking is, we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, that pretty much if another agency has a contract in place for what's a piggyback that we currently have, an example.
Solar. Well, no, that's a co-op, but yeah, so, piggyback. Sourcewell, we would consider what would be a co-op, but yet, see, so piggybacking and co-oping kind of get blurry, right? They get a little bit blurry when it comes. Does anybody know, can anybody tell me the difference here between a piggyback and co-op?
For the two in the middle column here.
Yep.
A co-op was when you work with another agency, and you get a price at least off of that volume pricing.
Yep.
And it's piggyback is you're saying you're using their price to say your own terms with a piggyback.
Okay, so yes and close. I'll explain. So on a cooperative takes into consideration that this is going to be utilized by other members of a cooperative. And Sourcewell, like the gentleman had stated, is a large national cooperative out of Minnesota. And they are state of Minnesota themselves, but they've turned themselves into a not-for-profit procurement machine, let's put it that way. But they're going out and constantly soliciting services and goods and things of that nature. And they're including everybody in this pricing to be available to them under what's called a cooperative membership. And we can access those agreements. We can utilize those as our own. And it states that we are members and who are members, and it actually, we're working with like a group effort, a consolidated effort to basically go out and source these solicitations. We have a local cooperative here, the Southeast Florida Cooperative, that we actively participate. As a matter of fact, as of last Thursday, we met at the city of Aventura, and the 52 agencies in the Tri-County area meet together, discuss contracts, and determine what contracts are the best for us to utilize. And sometimes as lead agencies, we will advertise a contract for solar salt, for water processing, or sand, or aggregates, or things that we have, different contracts. We have a contract that we're a lead contract on for scrap metal. All of our scrap metal that we have for the town, anything that we pull in a stop sign to get run over or anything like that, it goes into a dumpster that we have that goes to a metal recycling plant, and we get revenue back for it. So that's a cooperative contract that all of those 52 agencies can utilize and use the same pricing structure that they get the same amount of revenue we get for it as well. So we were able to use that volume to negotiate a better price downward to get better prices for our scrap metal or our scrap materials. The cooperative takes into consideration other members. Piggyback don't. When I'm just Town of Davie bidding something out for soccer goals, and I'm putting this out and I advertise I want 20 soccer goals, and I get responses back. City of Fort Lauderdale can look and say, oh, the Town of Davie put out a bid for 20 soccer goals, and contact you if you were the awarded vendor and say, I want to piggyback off that contract. I want to get those goals at the same price, but I only want to buy 10 of them. they still can buy them at that unit price. So again, we never took into consideration Fort Lauderdale was going to use our contract. Now they're just able to utilize it and take the benefit of not going through the bid process themselves and utilize our bid process. So does everybody understand that?
So I have we just, we're doing the city of West Palm Beach for all their garages. So technically, can another city just piggyback on the one that we sent out for West Palm Beach?
So you're going to give me more information. So all their projects, what are you doing?
We're doing their access control and gate.
Okay, so when I look at a piggyback, did you bid it based on unit prices of access controllers? Or did you bid it on building one garage and they had everything included, like a bucket list for that garage?
No, we just took the access control as a bid.
The access control units, so each one of the little guys that when I walk up to the door and I go, like that, it basically, you give me a price for that unit controller.
Right.
Okay, and I can get
Yeah, I'm
all,
not part of a big bid. I'm a part of just specifically a contract for the access control.
so you're part of that piece of it, right? And you were awarded that from, you said what county?
West Palm Beach.
West Palm Beach, okay. So yes, if someone wanted to be able to piggyback off that and they want it just for access control, is that the head end unit? And that's everything that basically takes to get into a door, right?
Through the parking garage.
Through the garage, right? Okay, so yeah, they can basically replicate it. Yeah, they can piggyback off that. Sometimes there are what we would call site-specific bids that we would not have a situation where we'd want to let somebody utilize that as a piggyback. But that's up to them. All of our codes are different in what we can and can't do. So there's variations to them. We all do the same thing. We have slight variations that, they might allow for something, we might not allow for something. So we all have different codes, different laws, different policies and procedures. So when we piggyback, we typically go through a process of getting you to verify that, hey, and are you going to basically give me the terms and conditions of this pricing? Is it something when you quote me, you're going to, thank you, give me the terms, conditions of pricing of that agreement? Like the Town of Davie here, like I said earlier, we have what's called a piggyback agreement, and you're going to sign that, and it's going to state on there that says, you agree that your company and the Town of Davie are utilizing this contract for this transaction or for any transactions, and we're utilizing these terms and conditions, and this is our contract now. That's what we really do. It just puts us together, because later on, we do not want to be in an audit and the auditor is speaking to you or one of your colleagues that maybe not even in the know and say, no, that's not Town of Davie pricing, that's Fort Lauderdale pricing, and we're not, they're not utilizing that contract. And we're like, wait a minute, yes, we were. And we're back and forth. We've had this situation. We've literally been in this situation where the vendor has backed out and said, we weren't even giving that pricing. And that was an error on their side, but it was an auditor. And that's not a good person. We want to be basically saying something that conflicts. So we have an agreement that says we're on the same page. So that's why we do that. And we also have things, for example, like if we're utilizing a cooperative out of Minnesota, we're not going to basically have the same laws as Minnesota. Our attorneys are not bar certified in Minnesota. Our venue now becomes, we changed the venue to Broward County, Florida. So they're going to sue us. We're going to do it here in Broward County. We're going to basically bring it to our turf. So those are some of the reasons why we put piggyback agreements in place. And if someone's handing one to you, it's a reason. That's one of the reasons they're asking you to fill these out.
Does anybody have any additional questions?
Let me stop for a second.
Yes.
Does anybody need a biological break? I mean, how much more are we at?
This is the last slide, pretty much.
Okay, I know I talk a lot, Marcella probably would have done an hour ago. We've heard together, okay, I didn't wanna. So,
You have no questions? Pretty much, I just want to inform you, again, we're the Town of Davie Procurement Division. You could contact us, again, if you go to our procurement homepage, contact us. And you can actually see who is the procurement agent for what department. And you can also contact our general email, but all this information is available, again, on the Contact Us tabs. Aside from that, that pretty much concludes our vendor training.
hold on, one second, Marcella, yeah, like I said, poor Marcella has to put up with this. These ladies, he just never shuts up about procurement. One of the things, if you get awarded a term contract and you come to a training like today, or you go to, what we call a reverse trade show, and I'll talk about that in a second, or an event that basically you're going to meet with government agencies, wave that thing like a flag, all right? Bring the information, bring what you have, bring some contact information, do a flyer, do whatever. But get that in front of somebody first, when you're using that as your first round of method of discussion. It makes the conversation a lot more interesting right from the get-go, because you're like, oh, well, I sell this. Well, that's great. I don't know if I have a need for it, and I don't know if my department has a need for it, but if you have a contract, the discussion goes like this. That's great. Let me have the information, let me have the pricing, I'll talk to my department. They can take a look at this, if they're interested in it, or we might have an agreement for this, but we don't have exclusivity in any of our agreements. Do we want to honor our agreements that we have? Absolutely. But if we need a backup, or we need a contingency, sometimes we have to have a secondary contract there, because we come to you and say, I need this tomorrow, and that's not realistic. I can go to another contractor, but I still need to get, a snow cone maker for the 4th of July event. I still need to get what I need to get. Either if I have another backup contract and I'm getting through good contract pricing, or if I'm going through an emergency and I could be being fleeced on it. I'm gonna have a backup. And a lot of times we will award our contracts sometimes with a primary and a secondary. And if the primary can't provide on an episodic basis, or if they basically fail to fulfill the contract altogether when we terminate them, we have the secondary. So you could be sitting on a secondary award, and yeah, that's not always the greatest, but it could turn into a primary as well. So don't shun that off if they say, well, we're going to make you a secondary, because it could be even during the term of the contract that things don't go well with the primary, or the primary might be out of room on something and say, hey, I'm so busy, I can't get to that till next week. But the vendor or the department can say, I can go to my secondary because the primary is not being non-responsive at this point. And it may be deemed non-responsive, or it may be they just understand because of the situation. So again, look at some of those as, don't look them as like, oh, this is a waste of my time. I'm not going to bother filling out the information. I'm not going to chase this down. Be on that contract. And again, secondaries are piggybackable as well. So when we look at agencies and they've awarded to 2, we'll always recommend to the department to bring both of them as well, if we have a secondary that we can use. We want backups. We want backups for this stuff. We have public service that we have to provide, and we have to do these things with that thinking in mind. Public safety, water main breaks, or if there's something that could be life, health, safety to any children there at the parks or anything of that nature, we're always having to be on the highest alert for that type of activity. So, I think that's pretty much it. Any questions for you?
I know some of the cities do this problem where they have like a GC situation, where they have the GC and the city people host like kind of something like this where it's informative about the project. Are you guys gonna do that for City Hall?
Town hall's all been done already. I mean, that, as far, we're on the 20th, or I think we're the 20th, there's a groundbreaking, for that. But we've done, I don't know if, like I said, Kaufman Lynn is the prime on our town hall project. I would contact them directly and then basically go from there. They'll let you know if they're gonna do any pre-bids or any types, because obviously access control is something that they're gonna be needing. We do have vendors for access control. But again, the contractor, when it's a design build, there's pieces of that, they are, we have a lot of hands off when it comes to that. They're set up design, they're hired to do the design and build. And you don't want to interfere into their process because again, that could lead to contractual issues for us. So you got to really kind of reach out to them and let them, that needs through that process.
Or just add on to that, if, just generally speaking, you're awarding a bid, once we send you over the award documents, we will also inform the project manager, so you guys can be in contact at that time, have a kickoff meeting, obviously go over the details, see inside and so forth. Any other questions at this time?
Lastly, does anybody have any contracts cooperative to you guys? Anything like that? You do? And it's on Sourcewell?
Sourcewell on the, NASPO cloud, we have, well, I think we just finalized the Sourcewell.
So NASPO is so it's IT?
Yeah. that-
Okay.
So the SFAR contract is the one that we had, that's last year, I think we just did Sourcewell this year.
Okay. So one other thing, anybody have any GSA contracts? Yeah, GSA. GSA is IT, so that's why that fits right in there. So like for GSA contracts, we can access IT contracts and we can access public safety, and safety, public safety, personal safety, and disaster stuff that we can be buying for anything in preparation of a disaster, under GSA contracts. GSA is set up on ceiling pricing, so those prices are the maximum. We can always negotiate down with GSA contracts. GSA agreements are a process. If you're getting involved in the GSA, it is a year-long process to go through the negotiation process with them, and it's expensive. Okay, it's a venture in itself. But does it have value? Absolutely, and especially in IT space and public, so that is one way to go about it. But again, contracts, cooperatives, if you see that you're bidding on a cooperative contract, make sure that you're doing your homework, reading it, and looking at the value, that you're not just bidding on an entity contract, you're bidding on a volume contract. So you're having additional agencies riding along with that. Have you ever seen that in any of your past experience when you're bidding on things? Nobody? Yeah, again, I would expect that from you because of you being on co-ops, but it's something to pay attention to. If it says that in there, and it's a cooperative, look at that from a bigger volume piece. Pay attention to that. And if you see those words and you're not sure how it reads and what it means, ask the question, because you could have more than just one client bidding on that. You could have 10 clients. You could have basically 10 agencies doing that. And be aware of that and not being able to take that opportunity to then expand your pricing or cut your margins maybe deeper if you need to, might be worth it at the end of the day. Just saying. Anything further? Any questions? Online, any questions?
I think that concludes our meeting.
So how did Marcella do today? Okay? Good.
The slideshow, and obviously I'll add some updates to it. Quick question before everybody leaves, I'd like some feedback on how you've heard about this vendor training initiative. If you've heard about it from OpenGov, can you please, a show of hands for me? Awesome, great. And we also posted on Eventbrite. Has anybody seen it on Eventbrite? And, what else? Okay, so it's mainly OpenGov. All right, great. Just just to let you know, we do post these quarterly in case you want pressure or bring, encourage somebody else to come. You can definitely check our town website on the procurement page. Aside from that, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing your responses. If you have any questions, remember, feel free to reach out to us, okay?
We might be sending a survey out to you. If you would, please take a few minutes. It'll only be probably 5 questions, if anything, if you'd like. Because I wore you out saying, I'm sure, sorry.